Hear ye, hear ye! The Parliament of Geeks shall now come to order! Yeah, it's not as good as the soundbite, but it's what you get. And good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Parliament of Geeks, where we, the good brothers and sisters of this assembly, ask and answer one simple question: be it weeb or be it scrub. And with me, we have two of our good brothers here in the assembly. First off, the only actual cosplayer among us, aside from my brief hobby forays, good brother Slick Rick.
Is it wrong of me to make a deal with a pterodactyl? Really, I want to know.
On text.
And of course, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
I'm not baning him so much today, but don't worry, it will happen.
Part of the contract.
Yep, we're doing that. Since neither Shades or Maddie are here, that means we don't have a soundboard, unfortunately. So there will be no rising for our drinking anthem, but let's say we did. So
I can agree to that.
I got water anyway.
So this is a bit of a change of pace, because for starters, as you can see in the title, this is listed as a special and not with the numbers, because this is meant to be a one-off that I had proposed a few weeks back, and got enough interest to actually go through with it. There will be a proper recording in our series in 2 weeks. That being said, when it comes, we have talked about tokusatsu on Geek Watch and a few other places, but we haven't done it on the Parliament. And since this is the first tokusatsu that's the first Kamen Rider entry that's finished since we started this little endeavor, I figured it's a perfect time to talk about it. And one might ask, what about Don Brothers? Are you going to talk about Don Brothers? No.
Unfortunate fact of the matter is, folks, Super Sentai really doesn't change much between seasons at the end of the day.
I find that to be a shallow view, but okay.
When you look at it in the broad strokes, this one definitely has its. Dawn Brothers does have its thing, but I don't think there's enough for us to dissect compared to sometimes the complexities you get with Kamen Rider.
It's an apples and oranges thing. The big reason why it's highly unlikely that you would see me tackle a Super Sentai entry is just the fact that I don't have as strong of an attachment to Super Sentai as I do Kamen Rider.
I can see that.
There are exceptions, of course, but just the way that it's shot, just doesn't work for me as much as it used to. There's also the fact that in the last few years, Super Sentai hasn't exactly been what I would consider must-watch TV.
Most of the time, you're just looking at the scenes as like, okay, what they're doing, anything interesting, what goofy moment comes up. That's basically it.
If I took a quick look at the Power Rangers wiki for the Super Sentai entries, I think the last Super Sentai that was must-watch for me, personally, was Lupat. And that's like 4 seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
Lupat, but then I also would say Kira Major, but that at the time I was benching a lot of the Showa era, and considering the fact that Kira Major, though it wasn't much, took a number of cues from the Showa era in particular. Some of them made sense.
Well,
but I could definitely agree with the Lupat, though.
Well, let's not forget who wrote Kira Major.
Oh yeah.
The guy that Toei had run out of town, and then had to crawl back to him because a lot of the stuff that they were coming out wasn't exactly stellar.
Hmm.
But and while I enjoyed bits of what I saw of Zenkaiger, the concept was a bit of a turnoff for me.
I can see that.
I know some people really liked Zenkaiger, but I don't know what it was, but something about it just didn't click.
Like, I know some people who are like that. I think most people, I think it just came down to at the end. You had an anniversary series, and just the way it was using it, I think at the end dealt with it.
I'll be honest, I got bored of Zenkaiger partway through and stopped watching.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was how they. I totally see that. Like for me, the only thing I kept watching was how were they using the past teams' abilities, and some of them I admit, clever, but otherwise generic.
However, I feel like we've gone way off the rails at this point,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Um. Going into before we even get into this, and yes, the subject for the matter is the recently finished Kamen Rider Revice. I wanted to do this one relatively early, before we got too invested into Geeks,
Mm-hmm.
which we may do as a discussion video, but I'm a bit iffy about whether or not I'm going to.
Geeks is fun so far. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's refreshing in a way.
But we'll get into that at some other point, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd like to talk a bit about the way the Reiwa era has been developing. Because if there is any theme, it's it's having a more expansive cast of both writers and support characters.
Oh yeah. You get a belt. You get a belt. You get a belt. Everybody gets a belt.
I wouldn't go that far, but there is a larger amount. It's very clear that some of the people were inspired by the large cast of say Gaim. I'd only say if it goes to that whole level of you get a belt, we haven't gone full Hibiki yet.
That's true, but
01 gave us 5 good belts, I think 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
The gun one,
Like,
Force Riser, the 01 driver, which the 01 driver in itself, the way they apply that one, the amount of times they reuse that with different faceplates.
Don't get me started on reusing a belt with different faceplates, otherwise I'm gonna have to break out 73 Nami's stuff.
otherwise, you're just going to have to break out Gaim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but
And Gaim is fantastic. So,
oh,
I mean,
most certainly. But with 01, I think it was like 6, and I think that includes. And I'm probably wrong on this one by 1 or 2, but that includes the 2 Force Riser Monster Belt ones.
But then the Arc series. But the point is that with that you started to have an expansive cast. You really had an expansive cast with Saber, and you do have a large cast of writers within Revice, though nowhere near at the level that Saber had.
God, Saber had 10.
Mm-hmm.
10 writers, 10 writers, and then extra stuff afterwards.
10 riders plus like 3 characters who
had belts.
Didn't. So I'm thinking May, Buster's kid, and then one other core character did not have belts.
I'm referring to the writers themselves, not the.
I know. I'm just looking
cast.
I know. I was looking at it as a whole though, because
If we look at it as a whole, we'd have to include the whole cast, and we're not doing that.
Yeah, we're talking writers and villains who got belts.
Fair
Because there
enough.
were those
I was looking
two.
at I was thinking about something else, like in comparison, the ratio. Because I think at the end of the day, I think like the width, it's something we can bring up later. The rails.
Now, something that I do find interesting on the behind-the-scenes end of things is that for the writer of Revice, this was his first. He had up until this point been a novelist. If I'm not mistaken. Well, one of them was. And yeah, Hanta Kinoshita is mostly a novelist.
Mm-hmm.
Revice was his first entry. He was up until that point mostly known for a series of novels called Nightmare. I don't know the details on it. I don't even know if it was ever translated into English. And Nobuhiro Mori was a secondary writer, but Nobuhiro's been a secondary writer for years. His debut was all the way back in O's.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he was doing all. It's not like he was doing all of the writing for the ones. He was basically the equivalent of a script doctor. And there was also Hiroki Uchida, who had done a few episodes for Saber, but is mostly known for. But when it comes to Revice, had handled some of the specials, which I'm just getting this out of the way. We're not going to be talking about a lot of the specials or the films, particularly because Battle Familia hasn't been translated yet. I don't think that's going to get translated until December.
Yeah.
And the other films that Revice has been involved in aren't all that important.
No.
At
At
least,
the end of
go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like, just from my understanding, just from the way I was doing it, because I did a quick lookup and trying to think about it, it was very self-contained, and there was plenty of times they called back, but it wasn't like a major narrative point.
Mm-hmm.
So, focusing on just the series itself is the best choice we can do to give a good judgment about the series.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, when it comes to, I will say this just from a visual perspective. One of the problems I had visually speaking with Saber was their shift over to Unreal for the CG.
Yeah,
It was
that was jarring.
It was very take me out of it, especially some of the all CG scenes, like in the whole Wonderworld thing. I know that's not the exact name, but work with me.
Part of it, though, I hate to say this because we all hate it. We hate this excuse, but this is something we have to acknowledge. Is it was part of the limitations for what was going on in the world at the time in terms of production, because around the time Saber, especially when it started, because I think Saber in the first fourth, maybe first third, we all can agree, very CG happy. When they were trying to sell the idea of the Wonder World, part of it was their limitation of how they could get away with restrictions placed upon them due to the pandemic.
I'm not quite willing to go that route.
I know. That's what I say. It's part. There's other reasons. There's got to be a lot of other reasons, but it's.
I think you're
one
overthinking it, Rick. I think the real reason is just it was that team's first time using this brand new engine.
Most
Yeah,
likely.
I was going to say that it was primarily inexperience because we do see the CG get better and better composited later and later into Saber.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, most certainly. But like when we had like my main issues have been with the CG. I would say like when we had to go through the whole worlds when they were battling in different picture books, like you see in the first few episodes.
That's kind of what he was getting at.
Okay. Sorry.
But I definitely didn't have that problem as much with Revice. And while some people were aghast at the color palette for Revice's design, it grew on me.
I didn't really have a problem with the color palette at the beginning. It kind of fit what I felt from the cast. The whole happy spa thing and them being bright, cheerful people. It kind of felt like they gave him bubblegum pink to get that bubbly feeling in there.
I can see that. Yep.
Yeah. And
I think like
speaking of that, while demons and stamps are one of the major themes, and in fact demons are our demons, specifically inner demons, are the monster of the week. I do think the theme that encompasses encompasses everything beyond that is family. And
yes, get your Vin Diesel jokes out now.
Yeah, get them out. Get them out now. I'm not going to entertain them further. I already appeased some of the people who make those jokes months ago. But
who, me? Never.
What I thought was a smart move was going on the whole inner demon thing, because we've had demons as the villain of the season in the past.
yeah, no. How are you?
I imagine we're more
In a way, but at the same
jinn
time,
than demons. It was in the name.
yeah. At the same time, you also. Moving on. There are some people who would make an argument, though.
Remember, there's the running gag that Momotaros keeps insisting he's not an Oni.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not. He's Momotaros.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
But again, a lot of the family thing has to deal with the fact that we're primarily seeing things through the eyes of the Igarashi family, especially Iki.
The Japan's biggest busybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nihon no Sekai Ichiban. I said that wrong. I know I did. I don't care.
Overprotective big brother. To an extent.
I mean, that's part of being a busybody, getting in everybody's business.
Oh yeah.
The other thing that we ended up having for the first time in a while is what seems at first to be a support organization for writers. In this case, Phoenix. And I can't help but wonder if somebody was taking notes from some of the science teams in Ultraman.
Mm-hmm.
Not anything one-to-one, but just the way the uniforms are designed and the way that they operate. It's very reminiscent of, well, pick a science team in Ultraman over the last 30 years.
I can definitely see Tsuburaya elbowing Toei, metaphorically going,
But
considering the fact they had some of the guest casts, I wouldn't be surprised.
mm-hmm.
Oh.
I just love the part where Vice has to talk to himself for an entire 2 episodes. Thank you, Subaru Kimura, for showing up as an actual character in the show at the same time voicing Vice.
I love
Good job!
Yeah.
That one was cathartic. It was the best.
It's also
Like-
where we got our first big bomb, but we'll get to that later.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of this stems from a stamp that was found in South America in the 1970s.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly,
I
the
think
same
the
year.
reason they said it was found in the 70s is because this is an anniversary season.
That was
Yeah.
the exact reason.
Specifically of Kamen Rider's 50th anniversary.
Which is, again, why we get the big 5-0 on the driver, and the fact that when Iki and Vice do their thing during transformations, they actually make a 5, and then they make Juji, the 10 Moji with their arms.
I think
And,
all of the Igarashi family did that.
And so and then like the main rider kick.
No,
Which,
I'm talking about the thing that the special handshake that Iki and Vice do at the beginning of almost every henshin.
oh, that one
That's-
makes sense.
That's them literally making a sign that says 50.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other one, literally the soles of their feet when they make the kicks spells 50.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that. You have 50 references in some of their equipment as well.
Oin Buster.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. I have nothing to say to that.
But in addition to that, we fortunately they did the smart thing and not try and splurge extra for guest cameos from the past, but instead having several of Revice and Vice's base forms be nods to previous writers, and
yeah, with like to an extent a decent explanation at least for why it happens within universe. The guy who creates them is a fanboy.
Yes. Karizaki George, a Kamen Rider fanboy and scientist.
And one who has a habit of randomly dropping English words.
From a young age at that.
Would that make him a Westaboo?
No, that just makes him a pretentious twat. I mean, did you even question that throughout the entire series, though, Monk?
No.
He's pretentious, he's a bit narcissistic, and he's very, very self-assured.
Mm-hmm.
So, but George is one of my favorite characters as well.
I don't blame him on that. He is. Oh, there's a part of me that wants to see Georgie just get his own spin-off.
But
I don't know
Probably
what
be in a
is-
V cinema.
Oh yeah.
But looking back at the first episode, it's kind of amusing how many seeds are planted. Because first, putting aside the fact that we have the introduction of our villains, the Deadmans, and
Which makes
and
Phoenix
their
an even more pretentious name.
Mm-hmm. I do remember a bit of controversy where some people thought it was appropriation that you had them dressing up in very Mexico attire, for lack of a better term.
And they even said gracias. Gracias, Deadmans!
And except it's very clear from the approach that they had, as well as the names that they had, that the leaning was meant to be in the direction of the Day of the Dead.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that the stamp was found allegedly in South America.
Mm-hmm.
So it figured that they would have pulled the traditions from there.
Yeah. That particular controversy died a very quick death because let's be honest, nobody respects anyone who uses the phrase cultural appropriation.
Oh yeah.
We laugh at them.
But the other one of the major things that was set up, or at least seeded very early on, is the issue with the little brother of the Igarashi family, Daiji.
Ooh.
Because Daiji, in the during when everything went to shit, he hesitated, especially when he saw his commanding officer try and use the Rex stamp, and just ended up backfiring to the point that it created another
Good man.
yeah. And incidentally, I remember some people saying that the design of the Dead Man's the Monster of the Week was weird.
They're
Um,
shaped like folded paper
yeah,
because
Oh, yeah.
they're all made out of contracts.
which is why
Which
I
stamps are the theme.
Yeah, I thought that was rather like obvious that they're all origami until they go to stage 2.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like considering so many different contracts being such a key part to aesthetically, not just with the stamps being that like a stamp because you use those to approve things in Japan, but then they also had the messages and other stuff.
Well, in the end, what the stamps were meant to, first of all, be a reference to what you just referenced, Hanko, the which are essentially a substitute for written signatures, and you get them personalized from actual stores that are kind of like certified by the Japanese government.
Mm.
And but you can also use your own natural signature if you'd like to. There's also the fact that yes, stamps are a thing that occur in texting, which is why we get the text screens behind Revice and Vice when they're transforming, and then again, of course, the whole contract. You again, the Hanko on the contract. It all makes sense. It all chains together.
Which, as an aside, as a fan of Puroresu, it did make me laugh that the first contract holder we saw was Minoru Suzuki.
A couple of, let's be honest, considering when that episode aired, there was a couple of, at least over in my neck, I know this was true in my neck of the woods, there was a couple people hoping that for a couple of Suzuki's matches over in Japan, Toei would have allowed the Mammoth to be like in his ring corner. Just like a fun promotion thing.
That would have been a terrible idea.
It was, but it was just them being. It was just something like for Goofy and proper and promotion.
It's still a terrible idea.
We all have stupid ideas. We can dream.
There's a difference between dream and delusion. But
Eh.
the other, but the big thing that I bring up when it comes to Daiji is one of the early mysteries is when it came to when it came to the team as a whole. Aside from the fact that when Vice first shows up, he's barely in Iki's control until Iki decides to play hardball and get him to agree to work with him on certain conditions.
Yeah, it's treated as an adverse relationship.
And what I do find amusing is that early on people were making comparisons between these two, between Iki and Vice, and Momotaro's and Ryotaro. Which even back then I thought was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I can see how, in the broadest of broad strokes, the comparison can be made.
I can
But
see the nature of it.
Momotaro acted like a Yankee.
This is true.
There was nothing.
Vice is a Looney Tunes character.
Especially considering how often he breaks the
Fourth
fourth wall. Hashtag nice Vice, by the way, everybody.
Well, here's the other thing. Especially in battle, how gotta keep this in mind. Most unless it's key plot point stuff, a lot of Vice's lines were ad-libbed. So it adds more to the comparison you were making, Monk, of him being a Looney Tunes character.
Mm-hmm.
He was just goofing around.
Yeah.
Oh, and it makes sense that they would ad lib for him. Again, because Kimura is, well, he's a comedian as far as I can tell.
Oh yeah, he is.
Among other things. But that sort of energy lent a very unique structure to the show.
Yeah. There is one particular part of their arsenal that didn't get used as much, and I think it was probably for the best, and that was the remix.
They got used early on a lot, and they had to do enough remixes to get their first super form.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the remix where the two of them come together to imitate the animal.
Yeah.
It was funny, and it was really funny, but I'm glad that they did kind of ignore it later on until, well, specific actions and specific elements.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, the first big villain arc is that there's a spy within the Phoenix organization. Especially since it's never outright shown, and I don't even think it's been shown in like a V Cinema or a net movie or anything like that. But there's the implication that a little while before the show even started, the Phoenix's base was broken into, and a bunch of Vice stamps were stolen.
Yeah, they say that, and that's really all it is. That they
mention
that.
it, but they don't outright show it.
Yeah,
which
I think
I'm fine with them only saying it and not showing it in this case, because it's used as a platform for why some people have doubt casted on them, especially Hiromi. Not Hiromi. Like, I almost wanted to call him Hiromichi.
I was about to go.
Yeah, Hiromi, who is Mr. Serious throughout this, especially since he ended up getting thrusted into a position that he didn't expect.
Remember, he'll lay down his life.
Here, have some painkillers.
But that was the way that they used this mystery to eventually reveal Daiji's other half, Kagero.
Mm-hmm.
Who is a rare exception when it comes to the way inner demons are portrayed, because it's not like he's hanging around attached to his host. No, he just has a more edgelord like appearance for Daiji. And really likes curry.
See, nothing wrong with that. I say as I look over my shoulder at 20 boxes of curry mix.
Kagero likes his curry extra spicy though.
Yeah, I'll take
only when Sakura makes it, because she makes it super spicy.
But the thing is that there's two forms of development. One is the stability issues that end up cropping up when it comes to Vice, which is the reason why Revi and Vice have certain upgrades they end up getting.
Skateboard.
But also the revelation of them not being the only ones with the whole inner demon and host relationship, because we already mentioned Kagero
Agero.
and Daiji,
Mhm.
which is how we get the two-side driver and the introduction of first Evil and then Live.
One is a sword, the other's a gun.
Hmm.
It's the same person, just spelled backwards.
Well, apparently they described it as the idea with the two-side driver is that as one side gets more powerful, that power will transfer to the other side, which is why George just let him have the thing. And that's a bit of a thing with George. He repeatedly does stuff that is technically the right call, but the way he goes about it makes him seem like a villain at times.
That's
Daiji,
classic Georgie.
Daiji wasn't a bitch. Daiji was actually really good up until he killed Kagero.
Yeah, that's when it really happened.
But there's also the revelation about certain incidents with Iki's past, namely the fact that Vice. This was the meeting at Phoenix HQ was not the first time that they had met. It's just that he had repressed the memory of it.
That's not revealed until someone else shows up, though, Monk.
Oh yeah.
That's not revealed until we first run into Vale.
Mm-hmm.
Which by then we also start to understand a bit with another sibling.
Yeah, there was also the whole thing with Sakura having to contend with whether she is strong or weak enough. Which, well, that would eventually, way down the line, that would eventually result in her getting her own driver, as well as the relationship that she had with Aguilera. But
whose name we don't learn until much later as well.
yeah,
Okay.
but as time goes on, the people who we saw as the generals of the Dead Man start to unravel a bit.
Especially after Phoenix has captured two members or one member who has to go through the rehab and is pursuing another because the Deadmans are trying to get enough of what they call the Phase 3s to wake GIF.
Yep. And actually, when you look at how they were all brought in, at least the three generals, I kind of thought it felt appropriate. Especially when you look at given some of their backstories.
Yeah.
Especially Go. That boy. Or Julio, as he's referred to.
Mm-hmm.
Amaki.
Yeah. Forehead. And seriously, he looks like he could be a member of the Japanese Three Stooges. I'm not wrong.
Just don't break his heart, otherwise he'll just walk around town with two melted things of ice cream crying.
That's a waste of ice cream.
I know.
But I will admit that one of the better new writer reveals was when Hiromi ended up revealing demons.
Yep.
Which
we got demons.
Now, granted, it was later revealed that Vale was hiding in the demon's driver.
In the original Demon's Driver, yes.
And was taking away his life force to the point that he became that his internals were the equivalent of somebody in their, I think, like 70s.
70s or 80s.
Mm-hmm. But there was a but as things go on, there were a few other revelations and betrayals, including the chameleon dead man,
Who killed the original head commandant of Phoenix that Hiromi respected so much. I believe his name was Kobayashi.
Mm-hmm.
Or Kobayakawa, excuse me.
Wakabayashi.
I don't remember. Let me check here real quick.
Yujiro Wakabayashi.
Wakabayashi. There we go.
Yep.
And in that we get a third general we didn't know about until that point.
For what? How many episodes?
Because when it comes to the phase thing, and this is one thing that I actually liked. Phase 1 is just being able to summon the dead man using the stamp. Phase 2 is I believe that was fusing with it and not fusing with the thing after signing the red contract and not being able to revert under most circumstances.
Yeah. Except when Revice separates you.
Yeah. Phase 3 is getting the investiture from GIF. And there's one of two things that'll happen. Either you'll become a Phase 3, or you'll die.
We technically didn't see everyone die. We just saw some people die.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, once GIF was awakened, we also got a new form of enemy that eats the people that they're made out of.
Yeah, the
rather than
Giftarians.
rather than signing a contract, you're stamped with GIF stamp, and you turn to stone, and a Giftarian comes out of your body. There is no separating. You're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the one who was the most callous with using that was Ortega, who, well, there was some bit of good in a few of the generals within the Deadmans.
He didn't give a
Ortega's
damn.
the exception. Like he was an edgelord asshole before he became a dead man, and that did not change. And as an aside, this is as good a time as any to point out how Kamen Rider Demons kind of became the hop around rider, much in the same way the Bee was way back in Kabuto.
Yeah.
I think we had at least 4 people using that driver.
Yeah, Demons was technically not always that driver. I mean, technically the driver gets revamped, but yes, for that specific driver, Demons was Hiromi, and then Ortega had it for a little while.
And George for one.
Then George, I think, wore it once.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last episode we had with Ortega before, like, the big break of it.
Mm-hmm. But then with the same driver, we had Kamen Rider Veil and also Kamen Rider Over Demons.
Yeah.
Over Demons, because it was Over Demons, and then the Zet Troopers / Riot Troopers of the season, because technically it was a different belt that Veil had.
That being said, when it came to Veil's first appearance and the revelation that he and the even if it was just in the in his possession of Genta. I usually don't direct people to watch the side material, but Kamen Rider Veil is one that I think should be at least, I won't say required viewing, but semi-required.
It's
To
better to like you don't need to understand the main story, but it enlightens you on certain things, be it some of the guests that comes into the family's hot springs, the relationships we see mentioned throughout, like a better understanding of it.
hmm and with especially since Vale is going to be making a bigger appearance. The big reason why I say that it's that the Vale side series should at least be looked at is it makes the when Vale actually makes his appearance as a full-on demon again, it puts a bit more weight to it. And especially gives better context to why Vale absolutely despises Genta and the rest of the Igarashi family. But what is kind of the one side series that I will say is completely optional is Revice the Mystery.
My knowledge that has no repercussions whatsoever on the main story. That is literally cameos and cameos galore.
Well, it was from what I recall, that was made as a showcase for a different kind of service.
And it was, but in terms like if you did for some of us who didn't care about it, I would say I was one of them. Like the main reason some people would watch that is because they had a number of actors either reprise or play new characters who were major alums of the franchise. Because they brought Axel back, uh, Dong, uh, Mister Dangerous, Gridian.
Mr. Dangerous was
I know. I couldn't remember the writer's name. Like I'm literally looking at it, but it's like they brought back a number of old characters into it, and they play their characters straight, which I thought was interesting, especially because a few times Georgie would see like Axel or the Gaim duo, the two from Gaim. He would play it seriously, but he would still find some ways like, can I get an autograph? Like it was it was still amusing to watch.
hmm Now, with that with that in mind, as I will admit that the one gag that definitely came along a bit later that I had a bit of a laugh with was when the rolling vice stamp first made its appearance, and we get Jack Revice.
Jack
Because
Revice is great.
the aftermath of Jack Revice is their roles being reversed.
Not only that, they're after they get stuff done, it becomes semi-fused.
hmm
Yep. So literally, if you want, I would say that's the closest you would kind of see with the relationship between Momotaro and Ryotaro, with how often the Imagine could possess Ryotaro. That the sequence for that when Iki is doing something, next you know, Vice instantly takes control.
hmm But shortly after this, when that whole issue got resolved, especially with the introduction of Thunder Gale, uh, we end up having a bit of a revelation that the reason why you have this ease of transformation with the Igarashi family, including Genta later on, is when they brought Genta back to life, or at that time he was known as Junpei Shiranami. They brought him back to life using Gift's cells.
Yep, rebuilt his entire heart with it.
Mm-hmm. And that particular gene was passed on to his kids.
Which is why all three of them are able to transform so easily and get along with their demons.
Mm-hmm. Get along. We're grading on a curve when it comes to that because, well, Vice is Vice. Kagero is a bit on the edgy side.
Love Cove is the cuddly mascot.
So cuddly that Vice started getting jealous.
That's Vice for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. To a point, like I need to see this. I wonder how the sales doing, but I'm pretty sure at least when Love Cove came out, like that hers probably came off the shelves a lot with, I would say, the female demographic.
Oh, I don't get involved in that particular
I know.
end of things.
I know, it's just the thought.
But the other thing that I did want to cover is that of the former members of Deadman's, the one who ended up going through the most change was Aguilera, or Hana Natsuki.
Yep.
Just going from being the princess of the dead men to
being the sacrificial bride,
mm-hmm.
which Olteka revealed to her near the end of the initial Dead Man's arc.
Which is a bit of a shock, because this whole time she was under the belief that she was going to be Gift's husband.
Gift was going to be her husband.
Yep. English.
Yeah.
Somehow English is my first language.
Somehow. But it's revealed by Olteka that there needs to be a suitable sacrifice, and that she was raised to be that sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Of course, in a fitting bit of dramatic irony, Olteka thought that he would be able to control Gif. That backfired, and he ended up becoming the sacrifice.
In the end, yep.
Which is a classic motif, to be certain, but a motif nonetheless. And I will freely admit that of the siblings, one of my favorite designs was from Jean,
Mm-hmm.
which is the form that Sakura would take when she ended up becoming a writer.
Kamen Rider Jeanne d'Arc, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she was Joan of Arc.
And
If you couldn't see that between the way they had the character written and the name alone, go read up your history.
yeah, as time goes on, this is where we end up getting the introduction of a secondary team known as Weekend. Which is run by George's father.
We don't find that out for a while, though.
Yeah.
For a while,
we just see agents of Weekend, and a few of them are people that we had been seeing for a while as regulars in the bathhouse.
I think that's one thing I really like with. I was pause it for a second, but because this is one thing I wanted to say for a while with Revice, like for most of the named people we get who we see reoccurring, and you see throughout the whole show, you can tell there's some level of importance to them. and I think that's one thing I think we all can agree. They kind of did well with it. Like they handled most of the cast really well with it.
Mhm.
Like not just to an extent, all of them had served a purpose, and they weren't throwaway. There wasn't someone who was there needlessly.
Yep. Now all of that said, as Weekend starts making their presence known, there are already some question marks regarding Phoenix, but this is when at the very least the leadership of Phoenix starts to make their heel turn.
Yep, because at this point, once we got Weekend in general, we had already lost the previous commander because he had been killed by Chameleon, and then Chameleon lost to our our heroes, and we got the director Akaishi,
Hmm.
and he seemed a interesting old man with some sinister air to him that only got more sinister as time went on. And he, in fact, entrapped one of the side characters that was important to Daiji, Akemi,
Mm-hmm.
and turned her into gift demos.
And as this is going on, he's going with this attitude of the only of it is impossible to fight against GIF now that GIF is out of his cage, and in his domain we see what looks like countless Giftarians.
Yep.
Especially since one variant, the Wolf Giftarian, was extremely stubborn to fight against.
I'm pretty sure his official name is the Hell Giftarian, the one who has the wolf-like face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that was it.
It couldn't die unless someone with gift-like powers fought it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And we would eventually see that when we see Ultimate Revice, but there was this whole but I would say this particular arc is probably the weakest because of how repetitive things got, with the whole thing of the whole thing of it being hopeless, along with some really blatant manipulation bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And the appearance the appearance of Daiji deciding to play the lesser evil game, thinking that that's the only way to give humanity some semblance of survival, especially when the Ararat shelter starts showing up, and the whole idea of of everybody getting stamped in order to get into the place. Which
Mm-hmm.
I saw some people claiming that the getting stamped thing is meant to be a metaphor for vaccination. That's a reach.
They're stamping them to collect their energy without making them make contracts with demons. It was pretty evident that was what was going on.
But the thing that's made very clear is Akaishi is extremely manipulative, a very powerful dead man,
Yep.
and a fanatical, almost preacher like attitude towards GIF, and later on a massive coward.
That was the interesting one to see, was the massive coward part.
Because of how in control he had seemed up until that point.
Yep. Which to an extent,
But
kind of made sense.
it wasn't it wasn't unsurprising, like in the larger scheme of things,
Oh yeah.
because he'd always been exhibiting cowardice. I mean, the entire reason he made the choice of submit rather than fight was cowardice.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you're referring to how he ended up becoming the servant of Gif centuries ago.
Yes. But even then, his entire attitude of just, there's no way for humanity to win, we must submit to GIF, was just his fear.
Mm-hmm. But I think the reason why this is probably the weakest arc of the series was how stretched out the conundrum got.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do feel like even in the more monster of the week parts of a show like this, there's at least some semblance of moving things forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like there wasn't as much of that for quite a bit in this particular phase.
Yeah.
I think the biggest the biggest thing we got out of all of this, just before he became Director Akaishi became a big problem. One of the biggest reveals I think we just skimmed over was the fact that all demon contracts have a price for using them, and Iki's price was his memories. Because remember, this is where his loss of memories was starting to show a little bit of acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
It was also erasing him from family pictures,
which we got as soon as, I would say, episode 3 or 4. Very early on, we get those hints, but we never got explanations until
the soccer episodes. The episode where again, the episode where Vice had to talk to himself.
Yep.
And we find out that the big issue that Iki had with one of his best friends was something he had forgotten because Vice's contract had eaten it.
I think they never explained what caused it and why that's the case with his contract and not any of the others. I think it's because of
they did.
They said
when Vale first shows up, and he has the flashback to the burning down of the first
first hot spring.
Yeah.
When Vice first appeared to fight off Vale,
he says you'll go to sleep and you'll forget all about this, and everybody will be safe in the end.
It wasn't explicitly said, but the implications of that, now that we hear it here, it was further explained. We'll forget all about this, yes.
But this is why when making deals like this, you have to be specific.
After all, the devil is in the details.
I was going to say, deal with the devil.
I mean, that was the entire Demon's Driver. Deal and decide up.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, the devil is in the details, and the details here are literally, I'm going to eat your personality. But during this Ararat weekend arc, which was probably the slowest arc, it was a battle of attrition. And mostly a battle of attrition to try and find a way to get Iki and Vice their strongest ultimate form and create a second Revice driver.
Revice driver, but I think at the same time during that phase, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that during the heal phase for the younger brother?
Yeah, for Daiji.
Yeah.
Daiji was also fighting against them because he had killed Kagero to get hit one of his form upgrades, the wing upgrade, which got him Holy Wing.
And his whole mindset was, I can't let that sacrifice be in vain.
And it was worse than that. He let his righteousness trump his idea. He let his righteousness trump everything. He said this is the only right choice, instead of understanding that there are some things worth dying for.
And
Because during this heal phase, Iki was constantly trying to convince him, you're trying to save people, which is good, but the way you're trying to save them, is that really living? You can't have a good life without freedom and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And Akayashi was playing him like a fiddle during that.
Well, Akaishi actually deliberately came to feel like he was family.
Oh yeah,
But that's also because Akaishi is a selfish prick.
that goes without saying with him.
Yeah. The whole his bitch arcs, his goofs. The whole stretch of that Ararat weekend phase was threefold. And that's the closure of the previous generation. 3 different people. George's dad, Genta Igarashi, and Akaishi.
Mm-hmm.
And Genta and Vale eventually settle things, to the point where even Vale feels like he can accept Genta, but if he ever gives him a chance, they're going to fight again. And that's when Genta gets his own new driver that turns him into a Hercules beetle.
Which
yeah,
is basically
Deathstream, which I think is the first time we've had a Hercules beetle motif since Blade.
Pretty sure.
I would counter that because I think one of the movie writers for Kabuto. But if you're talking about in the core series, yes.
And then Masumi and George's closure is a little more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But between the two of them, they're the ones who finish Gifford Rex, the ultimate form for Revice.
Yep.
Which allows them to actually seal Giff away. Or so they think. The confrontation between Genta and Vale is also the place where Masumi and George technically reconcile, and then where Daiji and Sakura and Iki try to reconcile, but Akaishi interrupts them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to it.
There's a lot of family drama at this point. Let's just leave it at that.
Well, like I said, family is one of the themes.
I didn't know it would get this bad with the casualties.
Yeah, eventually, Akaishi being, beaten down by the Igarashi siblings again and again, decides he's going to sacrifice the immortality that was given to him by Giff in order to be able to transform and serve him one last time, and to also destroy Ararat in the process, because that's what Giff had said should happen. Humans are nothing but bad, basically.
Yeah.
It's also at this time that the confrontation with Daiji reaches the head of, everyone needs their inner demon, they try to convince him. And that's when Daiji's like, but Kagero is dead.
No, I was sleeping, bitch.
And eventually it becomes, no, I'm sleeping. And so he gets his ultimate form.
Which had probably the
Worst name ever.
Yeah. Evility Live.
Just terrible. Why?
Japan, that's why.
No, I think they ran out of out of names, to be honest.
Yeah, let's be honest here, folks. It was not the best at that time.
I mean, it would have just been better if they'd said Evil Live. That would sound better. That would sound cooler. And additionally, we've had Hiromi lose his powers, pretend to die, pretend to lose his memories, then come back with his memories. Which was something.
Mm-hmm. And I will admit I did enjoy the fact that, in the aftermath of this, there's Kagero and Daiji frequently, well, infrequently switch who has the driver's seat,
Which is fun.
and we get an opportunity to see Kagero as a bit of a. I wouldn't say he's an asshole. He's just blunt.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he just has a very terrible bedside manner, to put it one way. But with some of the stuff he says, he's not technically wrong.
No, he is not.
He's just not good at explaining himself.
I don't think he's ever been good at explaining himself.
No. Which, yeah.
But in addition to all of that, George's father, I'd say is the one who I find his arc throughout the whole series interesting, because everything that he's been doing has been him trying to act in penance for the fact that he's responsible for the entire Vice stamp system.
Yeah, he's the one responsible. He's even the one responsible for changing Genta's heart.
Mm-hmm. And just everything that happened after the predecessor to Phoenix, Noah, was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
With it, because we did see this in the Veil series, that even before Genta was quote unquote volunteered to among their ranks as their weapon, they had already been doing a lot of experimenting with trying to weaponize gift cells. A lot of those experiments ending up in failures, but they were still trying.
Yep.
And there are a few other arcs to go over, but I don't want to go into exhaustive detail over a 50 episode show. That's the reason why we're doing this as a one-off and not and not in the same level of detail as we do the regular episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But the last major arc was when George had created his own writer system, one that doesn't use demons. And truth be told, I did like the concept of Kamen Rider Juga. It's definitely in that motif of combining everything that came before that we've seen in previous final forms for writers.
It's 10 genomes that come together to actually a really good black and gold armor. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like Kuga Ultimate, which everyone has been making references to, but with Georgie being a fan as he is, and most likely some of his knowledge of it, it would make so much sense.
I don't see Kuga in it.
It's supposed to be Kuga's ultimate form, like color-wise and a bit of the shaping, yes, but I could totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm not talking color. I'm talking in concept. This is not far removed from Rampage Gatling or any other final form that was an amalgamation of everything that came before.
That wasn't what I was trying to make, but getting back on topic.
Yeah. The only problem was this got resolved way too quickly. I think this was a consequence of how much sweet time was taken with the Ararat arc.
It was because I think this was originally this was going to happen, but then because that one arc took so long, they shelved it. When they realized that they still have a couple bit, they just threw this in hodgepodge.
Actually, I don't think the Juga arc was going to happen at all.
Not the way it was. I remember reading from a couple sources. Georgie was going to be a villain for the final area, but then they scrapped that idea.
Well, the reason I don't think that the Juga arc was going to happen at all is we were coming up on Iki running out of nearly all of his memories of his family and his friends and everyone else he cared about. They needed someone to push more fights just to have that happen. Was the way I was seeing it.
And since Gif was now dead.
Yeah. Although he did ask a good question. How will you survive when you're going to make more mistakes? And Iki and the entire family was like, duh, we learn from our mistakes and move forward. We've been doing that as a species for thousands of years, and you didn't notice that at all?
And incidentally, there was by the late point there were certain writers and certain characters that really got either underused or jobbed out. One of the big examples of this is Over Demons.
Oh.
Yeah. Over Demons got jobbed a lot.
Which version of him?
Both.
Fair.
This idea of combining demons with the I believe the Vice stamp was that of a stag beetle.
I think it might have been. Let me check. Over Demons was
a was not was a stag beetle.
Kuagata, yeah.
Yeah.
Stag beetle.
Yeah.
And it looked a lot like Kamen Rider Veil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it was just like a fine tuning of the Veil suit. AKA, let's just switch the helmet a little.
But I think the other avenue with this was providing. I guess they decided to do a two birds with one stone with both reducing more of Iki's memories and giving final closure to George, because because up until that point, George, it was made very clear that he had some unresolved daddy issues.
Some.
Who are you trying?
That's an understatement.
I was going to say, who are you trying to fool? Everyone knows he had more than some.
We do get a good point here. There was the mystery writer lab that was shown in the opening that was never seen again. Not everything in the openings gets revealed in the show.
I think like the writer lab where you see the three, the only time they really ever used that was in the crossover movie, but in terms of the main story, no. And I think the only reason they put that in is they had the assets already made from the CG for the opening, that they just wanted to use it.
Possibly. But in the aftermath where it's revealed what the plan is to try and get Iki's memory back, there is one little gag I did enjoy, and that is the proper way to pronounce parfait.
Parfait or parfait, depending on how you want to say it in Japanese due to how they do R's, L's, and certain things that are not from Japanese. If it were me, and I think it's probably the case for most Japanese people, it'd be parfait, and with an extended ah on the pa, so parfait.
Which
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me. I may have mentioned this elsewhere, but the reason why Fergal Devitt was Prince Devitt in New Japan was because nobody in Japan could pronounce his first name.
It
Yeah,
doesn't surprise me.
like I'm going with Xano on this. With the amount of times we seen someone say perfect with a Japanese accent, perfect.
Mm-hmm. Even then, I'm just going off the phonetics of the word.
I can totally see it, but it's just I forget which season, but one of them had a thing of it was Kabuto, and the first user of the B was like perfect harmony. Constantly was saying that, so that's what I'm thinking. Perfect rails.
But the basic thing is that the one family member that he hadn't forgotten yet was Vice.
So he had to transform and fight Vice to spend that last memory so that the contract dissolved, and then he gets all his memories back because the contract dissolves.
At that point, they were just, you could tell they were being serious with the fight, but at the same time, they were getting as many jokes as they can with that last fight. Because,
Well, it had to be bittersweet.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the Megalodon remix. What happened during that?
Yeah, it was a fun bash farewell is
Okay.
essentially the best way to put it.
Because the vibe has always been the buddy team, which is I know some people I know some people try to make double comparisons because of the 2-in-1 thing. Once again, I talked about this with Diaz last night, but some people really need to lay off on the comparison game.
Yeah, let these things be their own things. If you guys want more double, just go watch Futo Tante.
Yeah. And
Yep.
if you want more Deno, please step forward so I can see who I'm going to be punching. Seriously, anybody who asks for more Deno after the amount of Deno we've gotten, that is grounds for a public flogging.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure a lot of the cast, while they appreciate the paycheck, I'm pretty sure even they're tired of doing it. They know it run its course.
But one thing that I find kind of amusing is, well, for one, even though Iki doesn't remember Vice, everybody else did, and he kind of became the guardian spirit of the bathhouse. 2, Vice is still in there, deep down.
He's still partying in there. He's still riffing.
Yeah, he affects a little bit of his attitudes every now and then.
Which I think kind of works because it shows how in there we each have a bit of that dark side waiting to pop out.
When you could say dark side, just other side.
Yeah.
But what was kind of amusing, and this is something that I don't recall something like this being done at the end of Saber, and this particular tradition you usually only see at the end, in the last few seconds of a Super Sentai season, and that is this handoff cameo to whoever's supposed to be coming next.
At the end of Saber, it was an entire episode, Monk.
It was like
Okay,
entire
okay, I
episode.
stand corrected.
At the end of Saber,
It was
everything had been yeah, it was a 2-parter. They see a dead man show up and they have to fight it because it steals one of the books, and they eventually get the stamp back, and Revice shows up to get that stamp.
And that stamp was the grasshopper. But this has been going on for a while, like, because this reminds me similar to the final episode of Forza, where
there's handoffs on almost all of them from the Heisei era, or from the late Heisei.
Yeah, because it was Forza to Wizard. It was the upperclassmen with one proposing to the other when Wizard came by, and the female was like, "Oh, I want her. I like that," because he had like a giant ring. I don't think they did that for Ghost, or no, they did it for Ghost with Drives and Ghost.
The point is that it's clear that that this sort of handoff tradition is starting to become a bit more consistent.
Oh yeah.
01 is the sole exception, but then again, I don't consider the final episode of 01 to be the end of that story.
No one does, and it pisses me off that they finished that story in V cinemas.
On one hand, it is an annoyance. On the other hand, I can't necessarily blame them because right in the middle of filming was when the worst of the lockdowns happened.
I know, it still pisses me off because what's our particular maxim about having to watch extra or go to extra material stuff to get the whole story of a single thing, Monk?
Yeah, which is why I'm not going to give you too much guff about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, got called away for a second.
But in this case, the handoff is Iki finding a weird pink and black box, and then the man who we would later know as Ukyo Ace grabs the thing, says it's my loot, opens the thing up, and it's a trinket. Yeah, it is the trinket for a Desire driver.
Yep, and he puts Boost on one side and Revice on the other, and turns into Boost Revice.
Yep. And with all of that said, I think it's time we render our final judgments.
All right, brothers of this fine parliament, we came here today to discuss and deliberate about Kamen Rider Revice. And so, upon this day, I first ask you, Brother Slickrick, Kamen Rider Revice, be it weeb or scrub.
Given the use of not only the themes that they try to explore as much as they can, but also the different, I would say, the complexities of the fights. Honestly, this one I would definitely say you can watch. You'll definitely enjoy, and it's better than half the other stuff we've been getting. So I'm already signing my contract. Let's go. It is definitely weeb.
All right, and with that, Brother Rick has stated Revice to be weeb. Monk, render your verdict.
I had a curious attitude towards Revice, and I think the theming around the Igarashi family, even with when it seemed that everybody was getting drivers at one point. The only bad thing that I had to say is some of the unfortunate remixes and the Ararat arc going a little bit longer than it probably should have. But beyond that, now beyond the now, as far as where I'd rank this among the Revice series that we've seen so far, I'm not going to put it above 01. I am going to put it above Saber, though.
I was going to say Saber. I think it's like the worst of the ones we've had so far.
Well, we've only had 3, so
Yeah, that's true. But
And it's really not that bad either. So
it's not. I would say tough to watch. But that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
So, Monk?
So, with all of that said, as well as the fact that they are getting better with their use of CG, I would be perfectly willing to give Kamen Rider Revice a rating of Weeb.
All right. And so, Brother Rick and the Monk have rendered Revice Weeb. As for myself, the comedy was good. In fact, I even participated in #NiceVice. Both times it happened.
What are you talking about? #NiceVice never ends.
Thank you. Sound design was really good. I really liked all of the different sounds that we got for the henshin jingles, and I'm very glad that they shortened many of them. Revice's literal books of henshin jingles Saber's literal books of henshin jingles were a little excessive near the end there. Probably the greatest issue I have is the underuse of Weekend and the Deadman survivors near the end game. Because there was just no way to fit them in with the Igarashi siblings taking the center stage. They didn't quite weave in their secondary writers as well as, say, something like Gaim did. But beyond that, the story is heartwarming. It is comedic when it needs to be, and serious when it needs to be. It hits a bunch of nice notes about the consequences of our choices and actions, and how that affects ourselves and the others around us. And most of all, it does what Kamen Rider tends to do best: the never give up attitude. Even in the face of all hope being lost, even in the face of adversity, never give up. Take that next step. And so I also rate Kamen Rider Revice as Weeb. And thus, with 3 votes of Weeb and none of Scrub, this Parliament finds Kamen Rider Revice to be Weeb!
And I will be looking forward to seeing now. Geeks is already out with 1 episode, which is a very promising one, and the return of the same guy behind 01 and some of Xaid.
And some of Gaim.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I'm seeing so many familiar things in this show.
For good or for bad? Wait,
For
no,
good.
Wait.
For super good.
I was going to say, from the tone of your voice, he's in ecstasy.
A combination of 01, X8, and Gaim stuff to come together into its own unique thing? I'm loving Geeks, and I've only seen 1 episode.
Yeah. And with that, and it'll be interesting to see how things are carried out. Obviously Battle Familia is not translated yet. Like I said, we'll probably get that at the end of the year. And I know that there's been at least 1 V Cinema announced for Revice, focusing on demons. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. But but I do think at the very least it's going to be interesting. And for better or worse, I would say that Revice is the best anniversary show that we've had.
I mean, the only other anniversary show we've really had that was meant as an anniversary was Forze, I think.
Meant as a Forze
Forze was,
to an extent.
I don't consider Forze an anniversary show in the same way, because the sole reason that it had the name Forze was the anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's first venture into space.
Yeah, I can.
I know. I'm just saying. It's the only one that really felt like any sort of anniversary celebration of some sort.
Yeah,
the ones that people would consider a anniversary show are things like Decade and Zio.
Yeah.
And even then, those aren't really anniversary shows. They're just seasonal counting shows. Because if we look at how anniversary shows are done by Toei, it's usually done by year. So if we count backwards, because they usually do it every 5 instead of every 10. If we count backwards from Revice, the fifth one behind it would be X8, but X8 was definitely not an anniversary episode. And then 5 behind that hits Forze yet again, and Forze is an anniversary of something else.
And then
after that, actually no, Monk. It was an anniversary. It was the 50th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's flight in 1961, but it was still the 40th anniversary of the franchise.
Mm-hmm. But then we had Kabuto, I believe, which to an extent it was more. That one was trying to get more back to basics after Hibiki. But even then, I think it to an extent did. I think this one's like the best one. So I would agree with you on that. But I think we're getting a bit off the rails here.
Yeah. But with that in mind, as I mentioned before, we will be back in 2 weeks on September 19th to cover our assessment of Astra Lost in Space, as well as to deduce what will be coming afterwards. I will be back on the interview grind, and this Friday Zan and I will be doing the last of the Emberwind classes before we start really getting into the crunch of Emberwind.
Mm-hmm.
And this Sunday will be the return of Geek Watch proper, this time covering the rise and fall of Gainax. So, as Yoshi P would often say, please look forward to it. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay